tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Standing up to a retail giant.
It is obvious something that happened on the Amazon platform, and they don't want to be held accountable for it.
A Langley woman's fight to stop the stream of unwanted packages dumped at her doorstep. Plus, honoring a fallen firefighter.
And that is where he wanted to be. He was doing what he loved.
The Ontario firefighter killed while battling wildfires in BC is remembered. And raccoon attack.
They were attacking me, my legs, my hands, and they were biting him.
Vicious attacks sent several Vancouver residents and their dogs to hospital.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Thanks for joining us. A Langley woman is at a loss over her bizarre battle with Amazon. For months, she's been inundated with packages she never and billed for the deliveries. She says the online retail giant has sent more than 50 unwanted packages to her home, most of it returned merchandise. And as Ali Patargay explains, she may be the victim of a vendor scheme.
Almost every day for 2 months, Anka Nitu finds a not-so-special delivery on her porch. More than 50 of these packages quietly dropped off by delivery people at her doorstep with no chance to deny them.
I can't eat, I can't sleep, I start shaking when I see packages at my door.
And inside these parcels are shoes like this. These are not even a third of what she received. She's given away the rest, and they're unfit not just for her feet.
They are definitely not my style.
The packages come from different senders who are mostly from the U.S. Each box comes with one of these return authorization slips. Nitu suspects her residence is being used as a return address to dump unwanted merchandise.
It has my name, it has my address, it has my old phone number that has been out of service for 4 years.
But Nitu says the shoes are the least of her problems compared to the bills. UPS mailed her more than $300 worth of customs charges, which she is refusing to pay. And UPS has been slow to respond to her complaints. They tell CBC they're looking to investigate further, but haven't given official comment.
I might at some point in time receive a very hefty bill from Amazon for seller services that I never requested, and I never had, and I never want.
BC's Better Business Bureau says this could be linked to a vendor return scheme where sellers or third-party handlers can avoid warehouse or shipping fees by sending unwanted products to residences.
It might be cheaper for them to actually just send it out to random addresses and say that it's been given to or it's been delivered to a buyer. So if your address is available online somewhere, that's what they're doing.
Nitu has yet to prove the exact cause. In a statement sent to CBC, Amazon says the case in question has been addressed and corrective action is being taken to stop the packages. Nitu filed a report to Langley RCMP, and for now, she says UPS advised her to put a sign on her door to refuse all delivery drops.
I don't know how long this is going to continue. This is not under my control. It is obvious something that happened on the Amazon platform, and they don't want to be held accountable for it.
She worries her name will forever be associated with a third-party seller she has nothing to do with, as she wonders what will it take for the shoe to drop on whoever is causing this. Ali Patarga, CBC News, Langley.
Loved ones and colleagues said goodbye and thank you to a young man who died fighting our historic wildfires. Zach Muse, a 25-year-old from Ontario, was killed late last month in northern BC. For more on today's service, we're joined by Liam Britton, who was following it. So, Liam, how was Zach remembered?
Well, it was quite an event, and certainly fitting for someone who made firefighting their life. Pipers, fire trucks, maybe we can have a look at some of the images from today. Fire crews in a procession from BC, Washington, and California. It's been reported that they were carrying Muse's firefighting gear today. Those who were at the Donny Creek fire where he died were wearing black bandanas in his honor. Now, those who knew Muse talked about his kindness, dedication, and of course his sacrifice. They spoke about his passion for firefighting and making a difference. A relative read a letter from Muse's father. He spoke about his immense sadness, but also how happy he was that his son realized his lifelong dream.
Zach lived his life for this calling. As I spoke with his dad, Tim, yesterday, he told me about his many conversations with Zach. He spoke of how he was proud to be working on the Donnie Creek fire, of the relationships and the bond that he was building with his fellow firefighters, and that is where he wanted to be. He was doing what he loved.
Now, his boss, Mike Smesman, also talked about Muse's big smile, his love of golf and the outdoors. Muse leaves behind his parents and 5 siblings. One sister said they are understandably devastated, but they are grateful for the outpouring of support from Canadians.
Just an incredibly sad occasion, Liam, and of course we're grateful for his service. What do we know about what led to Zach losing his life?
Well, he died fighting the massive Donnie Creek fire about 150 kilometers from Fort St. John. Police say he was in an off-road vehicle on a narrow gravel road that rolled and went over a steep drop. Multiple agencies are investigating. As we've reported before, this is BC's most destructive wildfire season on record. And Muse was fighting the largest wildfire ever recorded in this province when he died. Liam?
All right, thanks for that. For reporting live for us tonight, Liam Britton. Residents living around Osoyoos can now return home. All evacuation orders in the area have been lifted. More than 130 properties around the southern Okanagan community had to be evacuated when wildfires swept north across the U.S. border last month. But now the town has downgraded nearly all of its evacuation orders to alerts. Favorable winds and planned burns helped to limit the spread of the Eagle Bluff fire. About 180 firefighters are still battling the flames. Meanwhile, the Donnie Creek wildfire, which has been burning for 3 months, has been downgraded from a wildfire of note.
So with the case of the Donnie Creek fire, at this time, it's simply just a large fire. So we haven't had recent observation of aggressive behavior or activity on the fire. The weather in the area has been quite favorable. So, yes, given it is a very sizable fire, but we have received rain over many parts of that. And the week prior to the long weekend, where we were seeing some of the activity on the southeast corner, there were recorded amounts of up to 90 millimeters of rain, like over a few days. So that, in tandem with the ongoing suppression activities, it's resulted in really good progress being made on the fire. And at this time, there's no concerns for community structure or infrastructure.
And on Vancouver Island, where Highway 4 at Cameron Lake Bluffs is expected to reopen at midnight tonight. It was closed yesterday in both directions because rain had increased the risk of falling debris. Crews have been working for weeks to try and stabilize the hillside there, which was scorched by a recent wildfire. There is a detour route in place between Lake Cowichan and Port Alberni. And for more information, drivers are advised to check the Drive BC website. Taking you south now to Hawaii, where wildfires there have transformed the island of Maui into landscapes of devastation. A fast-moving wildfire has killed at least 6 people and injuring many more. Our Mira Baines has the latest.
Paradise on fire as flames fueled by winds from Hurricane Dora rip through West Maui. The historic town of Lahaina, built in the 1800s, devastated as flames engulfed its popular front street.
Everyone I know in Lahaina, their homes have been burned down.
People jumped into the ocean to get away and had to be rescued by the Coast Guard on Tuesday night.
And I just ran out to the beach and I ran south and I just helped everybody I could along the way.
At least 6 people are confirmed dead, 2,000 people in shelters. Local hospitals overwhelmed, with some burn patients being flown to Honolulu.
We never anticipated in this state that a hurricane, which did not make impact on our islands, will cause this type of wildfires.
Communication has been a big problem. Cell phone towers and landlines are down, halting 911 services. U.S. President Joe Biden is pledging federal help, including Black Hawk helicopters and Navy fleets. Some Canadian tourists rushed to the airport to leave the island, only to be stuck there due to flight cancellations.
We figured it would be a good idea to get to the airport early. The drive normally takes 45 minutes, took us over 3 hours.
Air Canada had to cancel flights from Maui to Vancouver because fires blocked access to the airport. It says we are evaluating other options, including opportunity to operate an evening flight with a larger aircraft to accommodate all affected passengers. WestJet has also canceled flights and is rescheduling passengers. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians visit Hawaii each year. But for now, Maui's message for tourists is to stay away as the state deals with devastation. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Darius Madavi joins us now. So Darius, I just echo what that local officials there said. You would have never thought that a hurricane that did not make landfall on the coast of Hawaii would make such a difference there. Just devastating.
You're right. It is really surprising because if you look here, you can see Hurricane Dora passing through. This is about 800 kilometers south of the island, nowhere near it, but it's driving some rain and is having really heavy winds pass through over the island. Now, if we take a look at where the hurricane is expected to go, it started in Central America, past just south or quite far south of Hawaii, and is expected to move out. So hopefully as it continues to move, it'll take some of those winds with it because those winds are really what's driving the fire. They were gusts of over 90 kilometers to 120 kilometers per hour. And keep in mind here, we say it's really bad fire weather when winds are over 30 kilometers per hour. So just really driving those fires really fast, allowing them to spread really quickly over the island, partially as a result of Hurricane Dora passing by and partially as a result of just the weather conditions over Hawaii. Now, fortunately, our fire danger is a bit better here than it is in Hawaii right now. A lot of that low pressure system and that cold front passing through brought temperatures down, brought lots of precipitation to the province, bringing our fire danger nice and low. So later this hour, we'll talk more about the rain, where we got it, where we can keep expecting it, and where temperatures are going to come back up over the next few days.
That was a good context there to tell us about those wind speeds really making the difference. Okay, thank you so much for that, Darius.
Thank you.
It's taken years, but the BC government has finally confirmed pollution from the Fraser Valley is flowing into Washington state. Farmers south of the border have been calling on the province to take action. And as John Hernandez reports, the provincial government says one Abbotsford farm is largely to blame.
We're stewards of these waterways. We want to keep them clean.
Just steps away from the Canadian border, Washington farmer Larry Stapp eyes the waterways that carry contaminants into his local watershed.
The main stream comes right down there on that side, and then it splits right underneath the international boundary here.
For years, farmers and watershed stewards just south of the border have found high levels of fecal bacteria in the creeks that flow into the Nooksack River. At times, the pollution has contaminated shellfish beds.
We could do everything in our power in the States to do our part to clean it up, but we had no control what was going on north of us.
Cleanup efforts south of the border only went so far.
Yeah, I've been doing water quality testing for 25 years. The sample results were 200 times higher than what they should have been. This wasn't a few cows standing in a ditch. This is like major discharges. Somebody is pumping sewage directly into a stream.
After calls for action, the BC government has confirmed the waste is coming from farms and businesses in the Fraser Valley. Among the major culprits, Abbotsford-based Consolidated Enviro Waste, which declined to comment to CBC News. But online records show repeat visits by provincial inspectors along with numerous violations, including waste discharge. The company was fined $17,000 in 2021, which it has since appealed. In a statement, the province said it's working with the company and would continue to monitor and address water quality in these shared waterways in collaboration with state and federal U.S. agencies. State officials say they're also continuing work on their side. Along the watershed, there's hope and skepticism.
It's a positive step. I would say that talk is cheap. Let's see what the action is going to be.
There are businesses that take fines as a cost of doing business.
The hope here is for more collaboration between countries in the weeks and months ahead, because water knows no borders. John Hernandez, CBC News, Abbotsford.
A warning tonight about raccoons in the Kitsilano area. 2 attacks in one night sent 2 people to the hospital and severely injured a dog. Residents are calling on the city to take action against the mammals. But as Michelle Gomez reports, raccoon control doesn't fall under anyone's authority. And a warning, some viewers may find the details disturbing.
This is my blood and my dog's blood. It basically happened right here.
Jake Moss was walking Pingu early Friday morning in Kitsilano when 2 raccoons pounced.
I was just grabbing one off, kicking them. They were attacking me, my legs, my hands, and they were biting him.
After kicking and throwing the raccoons, the pair got away, but Pingu bore the brunt of it.
My dog was just sitting there with an eyeball hanging out by his chin.
Pingu lost an eye, and Moss went to the hospital later for bite and scratch marks. A neighbor saw the attack and drove them to the animal hospital.
He came running out carrying a broom, and I'll never forget the first thing he said to me. He just said, "Oh my God, not again."
Just 5 hours earlier, Emma Yendol says a raccoon attacked her and her friend's dog in the same spot.
It was vicious. It was using its teeth and its claws, and it was almost as big as my 40-pound dog. You can almost see the teeth marks.
She says the relentless raccoon bit and clawed her leg, where she later had to get 8 stitches. It also got Tio, biting his legs and stomach.
Yeah, it's been traumatizing for the dogs as well as the humans.
Moss says he's contacted the city about a person he saw feeding raccoons nearby. In a statement, the city of Vancouver says it's investigating an incident of wildlife feeding on that block. But it says raccoon control falls outside the city's jurisdiction, and residents dealing with raccoons should contact a pest control company, much like you would with rats. The owner of this pest control company says raccoon attacks are rare, but can happen in the summer as mothers defend their babies. Human habituation can add to the problem.
You know, if they're super hungry, they're used to feeding from humans, they may act in an aggressive way, trying to retrieve that food.
Since posting on Facebook about it, Moss says he's heard from dozens of people with similar experiences over the past few years.
It's like a local public safety issue, and so it ought to be the city's responsibility to deal with it.
They hope the city will take control before the raccoons hurt someone else. Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
To a troubling statistic, Vancouver Fire and Rescue Service says fires are up 31% so far this year compared to the same time last year.
Those numbers are alarming and concerning in itself, and we're asking for members of the public to be continuously aware of fire risks in and around your area.
Carelessly thrown smoking material continues to be the leading cause of fires, and 26% of fires were set deliberately, marking a continuous upward trend in suspicious cases. The agency is reminding the public to prioritize fire safety in their daily lives. And the labor dispute at BC Ports is over, but the federal Minister of Labor is hoping to learn from it by commissioning a report. In a statement, Seamus O'Regan says he's looking for solutions that create a harmonious working environment between unions and employers, respect the collective bargaining process, and secure the fundamental stability of our supply chains in the interests of each and every Canadian. On Friday, port workers accepted a new deal ending a more than month-long strike that paralyzed the ports. The Greater Vancouver Board of Trade estimated $10 billion of trade was disrupted over this period. Terms of the agreement have since been released, which include a commitment by employers to train workers on new equipment and increases to their retirement lump sum. The federal government is planning on selling a stake in the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project to Indigenous groups. The press secretary for Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland says a letter was sent to Indigenous groups last week with the opportunity. The document, which was first obtained by Bloomberg, says the sale would allow eligible companies to pool their money and invest as one company. Discussions are expected to begin soon. An 18-year-old baseball player from Abbotsford is turning heads. She just made her pitching debut for Canada at a major international tournament in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
From the right side of the plate, here is Rain Pageant.
Rain Pageant gave up just 1 run in 4 innings in Team Canada's first game at the Women's Baseball World Cup. Canada beat Mexico 8-1. Pageant is one of the youngest players on the team. She said keeping her nerves in check wasn't easy.
It can be a little intimidating at first because you are playing against the best players in each country, and you're wanting to present your country well.
She came out and did exactly what we hoped she would do, and threw the ball well. She threw hard. She threw strikes. She located her off-speed pitches. It was a phenomenal performance.
Pageant routinely throws her fastball at over 80 miles per hour. And this fall, she'll be joining Thompson Rivers University men's baseball team as the first ever female recruited into the program. This is the moment Swifties in Canada have been waiting for as fans eye up tickets that went on sale today for the singer's Toronto shows 15 months away. We'll have that story and more still to come. And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Moving day is stressful for most households. Imagine what it's like when it involves 600 canoes. The Canadian Canoe Museum has found a new location in Peterborough, Ontario. Mike Crawley checked out how the big portage is going.
The Canadian Canoe Museum holds more than 600 canoes and kayaks.
There is no other collection like this in the world.
Yet the vast bulk of the collection is stored in this warehouse, out of public view for the past 25 years. The museum's home in this old factory, too cramped to display everything and nowhere near water.
We've been looking for a waterfront home for this collection and a place where the whole collection can be accessible and available to the visiting public.
That new waterfront home is now under construction and will look like this when it opens next spring.
The only time that you'll need to back away, we all will, is once it's lifting.
Some of the museum's largest canoes are already on the move to their new home.
Our next canoe to lift is a 26-foot birch bark canoe, a Wigwas Jiman made by Marcel Labelle. A lot of work. This is several years of preparation behind us to get the canoes and kayaks ready to be brought here. Every object has been very carefully inspected, photographed, cleaned.
Museum curator Jeremy Ward shows off some highlights.
So this is one of Adam Van Couverden's kayaks. This was from his 2004 world record event in Athens. There's Gordon Lightfoot's canary yellow canoe that he and Fred Gaskin wrapped on a rock on the South Nahanni back in 1980. Gordon Lightfoot also wrote a song called My Canary Yellow Canoe.
To be able to offer them at the new museum where they can tell their stories and they can be visited by their donors or by elders or knowledge holders, it's a game changer for us.
When the new building opens, the museum will designate some of its collection for use on the water, so visitors won't just get to see birch bark canoes, they can find out what it actually feels like to paddle one. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Peterborough, Ontario.
Tickets for Taylor Swift's newly announced Toronto shows went on sale today. And even though there are no BC stops on the Eras tour so far, some Vancouver Swifties are still going to the show. Anis Hidari reports.
Yeah, it's like from a shirt she wore.
This fan's wildest dreams are coming true.
I almost yelled out in the locker room, did not do that. I held it back a little bit, but I was absolutely so shocked and so excited that I got a code.
That code gave her the chance to buy tickets to Taylor Swift's new Toronto shows.
It was actually quite stressful on the Ticketmaster site because you click a ticket, you go to purchase, and then boom, it's someone already got those tickets.
But she managed to get 4 spots.
I know I want to bring my mom, and I know we want to make a little family trip out of it, and I just have so many friends who want tickets, and we're really trying to get them.
Other fans were never ever getting back together with a ticket.
So I obviously asked all my friends, all my family, just to sign up for the pre-sales and different dates since there are 6 tour dates. But yeah, all of us got waitlisted.
Fans who hit that wait list could be forced to buy from a reseller, with prices starting in the thousands of dollars.
The prices are just way too expensive, way out of my budget. They go 3 times the amount as what they should be.
One way around that, experts say, if concert tickets, like airline tickets, could only be used by the person whose name is on them.
You can access the venue only if you have a ticket and an ID and the 2 match. So that system would completely prevent resale for profits because there's no way for this third party to slide in.
But that could increase costs because everyone's ID would need to be verified. There are still concerts that haven't sold out yet, but if fans haven't already pre-registered for their chance to buy, they'll face a big blank space in their wallet from high reseller prices. Anis Hidari, CBC News, Calgary.
And still no dates announced for Taylor Swift here in Vancouver, but some BC fans went to some extreme lengths to try to get tickets to see their dear Tay-Tay in Toronto.
It's an opportunity to do something fun with friends and family and visit family in Toronto as well and come together for something that's been there what feels like most of my life. And so there's something really special about that, and I just think there's a really powerful moment going on with really feminine opportunities, like with the Barbie movie and the Taylor Swift tour. People are really coming together to celebrate and have a lot of fun and just enjoy these nostalgic moments that were a part of us since childhood. And so for me, it was, I haven't gone to a concert in years and I haven't traveled a lot. And so I figured that this would be the moment to spend that money and make that opportunity happen.
And some sad news, celebrated Canadian musician Robbie Robertson has died. He was best known as the guitarist and songwriter for The Band. The group formed in Toronto in 1967 and went on to record several hits, including The Wait and Up on Cripple Creek. Robertson also had a successful solo career. His song Somewhere Down the River was released in 1987. Robertson, who was born in Toronto, also had success working in the film industry as a composer, actor, and producer. He received many awards recognizing his contribution to popular music. He was inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame in 2003. Robertson died in Los Angeles today following a long illness. He was 80 years old. A secret memo unveiled showing how Donald Trump's presidential campaign planned to stop Joe Biden from being confirmed as U.S. president. We'll tell you what's in it when we come back.
Long career, documented most of it in the testimony, your book. But you know, when you talk to people about the band, and you talk a lot about it in the book, it's not so much maybe one song, but it's, I think, the influence that the band has had on such big names like Bob Dylan and Eric Clapton, and people talk about the sound. Can you talk about how you guys, you know, just throughout the years, because you were together as a band, a backup band for so long, how did you kind of come up with that sound, and what is it?
Well, one of the big differences with a group like the band is we started out, I was 16 years old when I joined Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. And in the beginning it was Levon Helm and me in the Hawks. And then we brought in Rick Danko, Richard Manuel, and Garth Hudson. And when we were a unit, something happened. We were on a wavelength. And as we played the Chitlin circuit down south, as we played all over the place, we were gathering music, we were gathering sounds, we were gathering rhythms, and we were incorporating this into our own music. And over a period of time, there was depth to it. You know, all of a sudden you could hear tinges of gospel music and mountain music and blues and rhythm and blues and rock and roll and all of these things coming together. And then after joining up with Bob Dylan, then there was that influence of what he was discovering. And so all of these pieces of that puzzle started fitting together over a period of time. And when we made our first record, Music from Big Pink, people were like, where did this come from? This doesn't sound like anything that, excuse me, this doesn't sound like anything we're hearing today. This is, and thankfully, not trendy. So that depth of our music studies, it wasn't just we were out there playing gigs. We were on a mission and we were doing something. And then to hear in our music these levels, all these different levels of music creeping through here and there, and that's what gave it, I think, a bit of a timeless quality, and it sounded like, there's some serious music going on here too.
A previously secret memo shows a member of Donald Trump's presidential campaign drafted a plan to prevent Joe Biden from being confirmed as U.S. president after the 2020 election. The memo lays out the so-called fake electors scheme. And as Will Denslow explains, the three-pronged plan was an effort to subvert election results in several states.
Well, this memo was referenced in the 4-count indictment that former President Donald Trump faced in Washington, D.C. last month. He, of course, pleaded not guilty to those charges. It's a memo that dates back to December 6th, 2020. Now, according to prosecutors, it was a fraudulent elector memo. Essentially, what it plans is to provide fake electors in 7 key electoral states while Donald Trump was contesting the 2020 election. We've heard from Tom Dupree, a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, who provided more insight into the significance of this memo.
I think it's proof of the scheme that they were looking to implement here. I think that the memo will be helpful evidence to the special counsel for his prosecutors to say to the jury, look, you don't need to take my word for what they were trying to do here. You can read it in their own words.
Now, this memo by one of Donald Trump's lawyers states that it lays out a bold, controversial strategy that he says would likely be rejected by the US Supreme Court. It adds that it potentially could provide Donald Trump with more time while he was trying to fight the election results in the courts. So, of course, this provides very insightful strategy into how this case will play out, of course, in the weeks ahead by the special counsel, Jack Smith. Donald Trump, of course, has taken to Truth Social, his social media site. He says that these indictments aren't legitimate. He has described it once again as political interference. Now, this memo could also provide a little bit of insight into the arguments Donald Trump's defense team might use. And he could use that argument that he was essentially just following the advice of his legal counsel and that he himself wasn't doing anything wrong. So that is potential worth noting going forward as this case continues to play out. William Denslow for CBC News, New York.
A referendum in Ohio is being hailed as a major win for abortion access and voters' rights, too.
Ohio, we did it. We did it!
Voters soundly defeated a measure from the governing Republicans that would have made it harder to change Ohio's constitution. Abortion was not on the ballot, but the result is seen as a crucial one to an upcoming bid to guarantee abortion access in Ohio. And in eastern France, 11 people are dead after a fire gutted a building today. Charities rented the residence to use as a holiday facility for people with learning disabilities. The fire broke out early in the morning while the vacationers were sleeping. 17 people escaped. Most of them were in bedrooms on the ground floor. An investigation is underway. And today, India's opposition leader delivered a scathing denunciation of the government over Manipur's state's ethnic violence. Rahul Gandhi accused Prime Minister Narendra Modi of doing nothing to stop the conflict and pouring kerosene on it instead. Ishan Garg reports.
Speaker, sir, इन्होंने मणिपुर में
Rahul Gandhi, who is widely seen as the de facto leader of India's main opposition, the Congress Party, has said that the government is letting Manipur burn. The state is facing intense ethnic clashes for past 3 months now. The two main communities in Manipur, the majority Meitei communities and the tribal Kuki communities, have been engaged in a conflict for nearly 3 months that has resulted in more than 150 deaths. Rahul Gandhi says that the Narendra Modi government has neglected Manipur and the wider area of northeastern India. He called the people in Prime Minister Modi's party traitors, accusing them of not paying attention to Manipur. Now, the government has denied these allegations, and they have actually said that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is politicizing a very sensitive issue. Rahul Gandhi's coalition is now debating a motion of no confidence against Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
मणिपुर के दोनों समुदायों से
India's Interior Minister Amit Shah has said that the government is working to restore normalcy in Manipur. He has said that more than 10,000 people have been arrested so far and more than 1,000 police complaints have been filed. This vote of no confidence is going to be held on Thursday, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to speak in the parliament then. Now, while the opposition parties do not have the numbers to force Mr. Modi out, analysts say that they are going to use this opportunity to highlight the issue of Manipur ahead of the general elections next year, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be seeking a third term as the Prime Minister of the country. Ishan Garg for CBC News, New Delhi.
Global Affairs says a recent disinformation campaign on Chinese social media targeted Ontario MP Michael Chong, and it calls Chinese government involvement highly probable. The federal agency says false or misleading stories appeared on WeChat in May, touching on his background and political views. Reports this spring allege a Beijing-planned intimidation campaign against Chong. Chong says today's news underscores what he calls federal inaction on political interference and a need for a public inquiry. Have you ever heard of a Garry Oak meadow? This ecosystem is home to around 700 different plant species in BC, also one of the rarest in Canada. We'll have details next.
He has trouble walking. His vision is fading. But to a rock icon who didn't know it,
we are amazed about your life.
Resurrection can never come too late.
We had all these theories about what had happened to him. We had heard the stories that he had died and all that, but when we found out that he was still alive, it was great.
What is your name?
Yeah, it's Mike.
To Mike. Well, I feel like Cinderella sometimes.
Sugar man, won't you hurry?
The story of Sisto Rodriguez is nothing short of a rock and roll fairy tale. A brilliant songwriter and singer from Detroit who barely sold a record, but who became a musical legend anyway. Only he never knew it.
You're the answer that makes my questions disappear.
The story begins in the gritty streets of Detroit in the late 60s. When producers stumbled on Rodriguez playing in smoky bars, they were convinced they had found the next Bob Dylan.
Sugar man, sugar man, sugar
but despite the critical acclaim, record sales were a flop.
I was too disappointed to be disappointed, so to speak. Now that, you know, but I had a lot of aspirations for that, and so did a lot of people around me.
Rodriguez disappeared, but while he faded away, he had no idea his political poetry was becoming a phenomenon on the other side of the world. Bootleg copies of his first album, Cold Fact, made it to South Africa, where it became not only a must-have record, but the unofficial soundtrack to youth protests against apartheid.
Politicians using people they're abusing.
For me, what it was growing up in that authoritarian, dictatorial society.
Ian Abramovich was among those young white liberals who, like thousands, found inspiration in Rodriguez's anti-establishment lyrics.
We would listen to music, and there was this guy that had written these lyrics and was singing these songs about all kinds of subjects that were taboo, you know, sort of pushing back against authority, drugs, sex, all about the working class, and I think that struck a chord.
How many times you had sex and
Officials censored the lyrics, even scratching out the more provocative ones to make sure radio stations wouldn't play them. But in homes, Rodriguez's mystique and music endured, partly because no one knew where he was actually from, or if he was even alive.
do you know who'll be next? I wonder.
Rumors had swirled for years that Rodriguez had dramatically killed himself on stage in the 70s. It wasn't until nearly 30 years later, when two South African fans began to look for clues in his lyrics, that they found a trail to Detroit and found Rodriguez. Still alive, still living in the same modest house with a wood-burning stove, and after all those years, still working as a manual laborer.
After weeks of sunny, hot, dry weather here on the Lower Mainland, finally we got a bit of the wet stuff last night. So we asked people in downtown Vancouver what they thought of the summer rain.
I think it's fantastic. We so desperately need some moisture in the air, on the land, and the whole planet's pretty dry right now. So I think Vancouver is extremely fortunate to have this good weather.
Vancouver, generally it's very hot. I'm pretty new here, so this is the best I have experienced till now.
Today's weather is good, man. Everything gets, water. It's, everyone's the plants, everything's thirsty.
I don't know. I'd kind of like it to stay this way. I don't want it to get any hotter.
I think it's great. It's wonderful. Cleans the air. The little bit of rain cleans the air, makes it nice and fresh for us all. I love it.
I love those answers, Darius. We're in Vancouver for a reason. Nobody was upset about the rain. That was great.
That was great to see. I also was starting to think that everybody in Vancouver was lying about it always being rainy here, just to keep people from moving here.
Yeah, because you're kind of new here, right?
I am pretty new. Yeah, I've been out here a lot, but new to be here. Maybe one day I'll be considered a local. That's the goal. But I already enjoy the rain, so I'm almost there. Thank you. We did see quite a bit as it passed through. As usual, the North Shore got a little bit more than downtown Vancouver did, but plenty of rain really across the city. And that was the story pretty much across the province. Most of the province got a good smattering of rain. The southern interior, it was more isolated patches over the last 24 hours, but especially over the central parts of Vancouver Island and into the central parts of the province. Over the last 24 hours, we got a good amount of rain, and because there wasn't too much instability coming with it, wasn't too many lightning strikes. So for the most part, we did expect that it would bring fire danger down as it did with temperatures. We did see fairly low temperatures really across the province, especially in the south, much lower than we'd usually expect to see it this time of year. But that cold front has passed through, which means that if we look at the fire danger, it may have come down since yesterday. We did see it come down, especially in the south. No more high or extreme fire danger for the most part, but I'm not sure how long it's going to last. We are going to get a bit more rain through parts of the province over the next 24 hours, but I don't think it'll be enough to keep the fire danger down in the long term once we see a new high pressure system move in Friday and into the weekend, we're going to see those high temperatures really return, especially in the south. There's going to be quite a hot, dry weekend. But for the meantime, we can enjoy quite a bit of rain across the province in the next 24 hours. Less so here in Vancouver, so you probably don't need your raincoat tomorrow morning. It will be quite a bit drier through the southern parts of the province. Really, it's up the coast and into the northeast that we have that rain. A few isolated showers, maybe a couple thunderstorms in the southern interior, but missing somehow us here on the lower mainland. It looks like it's going to be quite a dry next 24 hours. We will see a bit of a smattering on the north coast. This has changed quite a bit. It could hit North Vancouver, we're not quite sure, but it does look like for the most part, could be a little bit of rain in the morning, but mostly just some clouds, and then sun moves in for the weekend.
All right, Darius, as a lifelong Vancouverite, I can promise you that first icon on your board, that's typically what we see here.
All right, if you promise.
We will get the rain eventually. Okay, thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
We have a treat for you plant enthusiasts from our Creative Network team here at CBC. We're taking you through a Garry Oak meadow in Victoria, home to more than 700 types of plant species. Creators tell us about some of the unique plants and the ecology of the meadows. Take a look.
Hello everyone, I'm Canoe.
And I'm Emily.
And we are a couple of plant nerds currently standing in our favorite place. This is a Garry Oak meadow.
There are roughly 700 different types of plant species within the Garry Oak ecosystem, and today we're gonna go find some of our favorites.
Before we show you any flowers, I have to show you this tree. It's the Garry Oak. The Garry Oak is the only species of oak that's native to British Columbia. Its range in Canada is limited to a very narrow strip of eastern Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. You can tell they're Garry Oaks by this thick greyish bark, usually partly covered in moss. They also have these distinct twisted branches, and I always think they look like trees you see in horror movies. They're a really invaluable part of this ecosystem. Their mossy trunks provide cover for insects, which are then food for songbirds. Their leaves are food for caterpillars. It just goes on and on. You can find them in abundance around the Victoria area, with some of them likely to be around 400 years old. Okay, Garry Oak, we love you, but let's go find some flowers.
The meadows right now are a tangled web of flowers. You can see a number of species: sea blush in pink, western buttercup in yellow, and this purple flower, the camas. Camas is the star of these meadows, and you can see it really stands out with this vibrant purple color. It's actually a member of the asparagus family, and you can kind of see that before they open up. Looks a little bit like it, right? Once they flower though, they have this beautiful star-shaped flower, which is usually a dark blue and purple. They really dominate the Garry Oak meadows because of their height. Some of them can grow to over 1 meter tall.
Oh my word, I've just found my favorite flower in all of the meadows. It's the shooting star. You can usually see them bunched together in little groups. And what's so interesting about them is the way they need to be pollinated. They're pollinated through something called buzz pollination, where the bee has to vibrate its wing muscles and shake the pollen loose from the flower. Only certain native species of bees are able to do this, and it's an example of how, over thousands of years, native plants and animals of southern Vancouver Island have evolved to live in a symbiotic way. A great example of this is with a white flower that covers this meadow, the death camas, and a tiny little bee called the death camas minor bee.
As I'm trying to set up to get some shots here of these minor bees, let me tell you a little bit about the death camas. As you can see, it has these yellow and white colored flowers with a round top. Now, I talked about the camas earlier. Well, despite their similar names, death camas is not closely related. The bulbs of both plants can be easily mistaken for each other, which can be a problem because camas bulbs are edible and death camas bulbs are not. All parts of the death camas are poisonous, with dire consequences of eating them to both us and the animals. The poisonous compounds produced by death camas have been found in both their nectar and pollen, so it's a no-go for most pollinators, except for this one. It's the death camas minor bee, and this bee specializes on eating the death camas flowers. It is possibly the only bee that can tolerate its toxins, and you can see it going from death camas to death camas. It is so cool to see the interconnected relationships between these species here and the Garry Oak meadows. Without each other, they could both go extinct, and we would lose 2 amazing species. There are hundreds of these relationships going on in the flowers around us between insects, birds, mammals, and these plants.
This right here is chocolate lily, and if you come across chocolate lily, it stinks. Chocolate lily smells like garbage or dead things. That one actually wasn't too bad. I smelled worse, but still. Most flowers have a scent, and they do this to attract pollinators. Flies love the smell of awful things, so as a fly is going around the meadow, they can't help but come to investigate the chocolate lilies. As they investigate the chocolate lilies, they pick up some of their pollen, and off they go to spread it around the meadow. I absolutely love how they stand up high above the undergrowth on this long stem, and they have these big green leaves as well. And the flowers, oh my word, they look a bit like lampshades as they point downwards towards the ground. You don't see brown flowers very often, but they do have this beautiful speckled pattern. They can be easy to miss, but you can usually find them in patches underneath or around the Garry Oak trees.
You can find Garry Oak meadows in a couple different places, from these expansive meadows to the rockier, more coastal meadows, where the flowers can be slightly different. I'm looking for some of those more tiny flowers that you find here in these rocky outcrops. Let's go see what we can find. This is yellow monkey flower. It has this beautiful bright yellow and these red dots that presumably act like a little runway to get the insects inside. This one is the blue-eyed Mary. They're only around 4 millimeters in length. Here's my finger for scale, so little. They have a lot of color. They're purple on top, blue underneath, green leaves, and a red stem. You can see them usually on mossy, rocky surfaces and patches. This is sea blush. You see it covering Garry Oak meadows, really distinctive with that pink ball of flowers on top and the green stem. Unlike the tiny flowers we've seen, they can get fairly big and they can actually reach over 20 centimeters. There are too many plants here and I want to show you them all. So let's go find our final plant. It's really special and in a secret location as it's one of Canada's most endangered.
That is golden paintbrush, and it's only really found on a couple of tiny islands off Victoria. I can't believe I get to see it like this in full bloom. Golden paintbrush is such a beautiful plant with a really striking yellow color. This plant is so endangered. It's probably one of only about 5 wild populations left in all of Canada. Really important for me to see this plant here because this is a plant that almost went extinct in Canada, and honestly it could still go extinct. Many of the other species that live in this ecosystem are also listed as endangered. In total, it's going to be well over 100 species. These flowers and meadows are so important. The Garry Oak ecosystem has been identified as a hotspot of biological diversity. And here in British Columbia, it's the most biodiverse terrestrial ecosystem in the province.
It's never been so important for us to share and celebrate these magical meadows.
And they really are magical. I mean, we've seen so many different flowers today and there are still so many more. Like, we barely scratched the surface. And that's what makes this place just so exciting and cool.
These flowers are so precious and in many cases listed as endangered and therefore legally protected. It means we have to be careful and respectful in the meadows at all times of the year, making sure we don't trample or pick any of the plant species. The only exception to this is for the indigenous peoples who continue to steward and utilize the meadows today as they've done since time immemorial. Thanks so much for watching.
A report by the Auditor General of Ontario says a government decision to allow housing development in a protected Greenbelt was biased. CBC's Ithlo Musa reports on how the move favored certain developers with political connections and failed to consider environmental consequences.
This is a flawed process.
Ontario's Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk has issued a scathing report examining the province's controversial plan to develop sections of Ontario's Greenbelt surrounding the Greater Toronto Area.
We saw what we think is preferential treatment.
Lysyk says the process of opening up protected lands for housing development was heavily influenced by a small group of well-connected developers who now stand to make billions of dollars. And it was done without considering environmental impacts or properly engaging the public.
Fair, transparent, and respectful consultation did not take place.
Lysyk says the process was largely controlled by Housing Minister Steve Clark's chief of staff, rather than nonpartisan public servants.
These lands should go back into the Greenbelt.
Some critics want the authorities to investigate.
I think further investigation of the relationship between the developers and the provincial government is necessary, and I hope the OPP picks up on that.
Well, I look at it.
Ontario's premier acknowledged shortcomings with the process.
I'm going to take full responsibility. I'm the premier. That's where the buck stops.
Ford says his government will implement most of Lysyk's report recommendations. The only one he's refused to consider, possibly reversing the province's Greenbelt development plans.
The process we will fix, but we're going to continue building homes.
Lizig says the move is unnecessary to hit the province's housing goals, and some critics are questioning whether some developers who bought land in the Greenbelt before protections were removed were tipped off to the government's plans.
Let's call this what it is: corruption.
How did you not know?
Lizig says Housing Minister Steve Clark ought to have known the key details of such a high-profile and politically sensitive government project. And Ontario's NDP leader is calling for his resignation.
We need real consequences for these actions, not just a shuffling of personnel.
Ontario's Greenbelt was created in 2005 to manage urban sprawl. It's the world's largest, and many advocates say it should continue to be protected. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, the first ocean-going canoe has been carved in over 100 years, and it can be found at YVR. Details next.
A shortage of anesthesiologists means we're likely to see more operating room closures across the province. That's according to the Ontario Medical Association.
The reality is that in the last several years, the number of anesthesiologists being trained just hasn't kept up with the demand.
In a survey of hospital chiefs of anesthesiology, the OMA found that in the past 6 months, 73% had experienced being unable to find replacement staff to fill vacancies, and that 59% of operating room closures were the result of anesthesiologist absences.
We are worried that surgical services and the ability for anesthesiologists to provide complete and adequate coverage is at risk.
Now, this all comes at a time when the province is still working to address a backlog of surgeries caused by the pandemic. They say hundreds of thousands of patients are still on waiting lists, and Dr. Kumar says that's only going to get worse if operating rooms are forced to close due to staff shortages.
Patients have been waiting longer for surgery, and of course what this means is that their disease state has advanced more.
With even longer wait times on the horizon, people are understandably concerned.
That is pretty alarming. My son has Down syndrome, so there's a lot of children with Down syndrome that need heart surgeries.
So imagine those people that require the surgeries, and if they're going to have to wait for 9 years and all that, just doesn't sound right.
This also isn't the first time the province has faced this problem.
In the early 2000s, we had a fairly significant crisis in anesthesia staffing that was also predicted and predictable.
At the time, the province modified the model, adding a team member to help with the workload.
Which is a model of care that extends the footprint of an anesthesiologist. And they do that with an added team member, which is called an anesthesia assistant.
Now, the group is calling on the province to provide more funding for anesthesia care teams, as well as asking for better data collection on hospital staffing needs. In a response sent to CBC, the Ministry of Health says it's planning for the province's future healthcare needs, outlining that it has launched the largest medical school expansion in 15 years. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Support sustainable agriculture and celebrate local food with Margaret Gallagher at Feast of Fields. Enjoy the Gourmet Harvest Festival at the Stable Harvest Farms on September 10th. Tickets at farmfolkcityfolk.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
YVR and the Musqueam Indian Band unveiled a gathering space at the domestic arrivals terminal today.
This space is very important. As I said, it's in a very high traffic area, so many millions of people will have an opportunity to understand the land and the First Nations and Indigenous people who originally occupied it.
The space features a canoe made from a 600-year-old red cedar log, carved by master carvers from 10 Musqueam families and over 100 airport staff. It's the first ocean-going canoe carved in more than 100 years using traditional Musqueam skills. It's part of an ongoing sustainability and friendship agreement. It's a stunning piece. All right, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us at CBC News at 6. A reminder, if you're not already watching us on CBC Gem, that's our free app. You might want to check it out and download it. And Tanya Fletcher will be in for Dan Burrett tonight on our 11 o'clock news right after the National. Have a good night.